What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to another video. It's a pleasure to be here today. The idea of obstacles are the way, and the idea that hindrances in your path are ultimately something that you should lean into, right? Let's embrace the obstacles, right? Why are we going to embrace the obstacles? Well, you have to realize that life is both neither good nor bad, but it is simply neutral. Life is, right? And here's the harsh reality that a lot of people fail to understand is that perception is reality, right? So whatever the mind believes, the mind will conceive, right? Whatever the mind believes, it will also perceive in this world, right? So if you look into the bad and you think the world is bad, well, you're right. There are bad things, right? But if you look at the world as being good, you're right, right? So whatever we believe, whatever we ultimately look at as good or bad is true, right? If we look at the world and we perceive it as bad, well, you're right. But if you look at it as good, you're also right. And so what I mean by that is there is good in this world and there is also bad, right? And ultimately, whatever you see and whatever you perceive, the mind will believe. And so your reality is ultimately whatever you believe it to be. And so if you think you're worthless and you think you're not able to do the things that you're able to do in a day's time, well, you're right. If you're thinking, though, that you're successful and that you can achieve great things, well, you're right. So that's a baseline. That's where I want to start here with you guys, is that you ultimately have to shift your mindset. You have to shift your perception of reality to your advantage to allow you to achieve your goals that you desire, right? And what I mean by that is that if you want to achieve good things in this life, you have to start thinking more of good things. You have to stop looking at things as bad. You have to stop perceiving the world as negative, because you will, as a result, get negative results if that's what you're doing. And so it's a very ones and twos game, and it's not that black and white, but if you look at it that way, you'll be able to get closer to your goals as a result of just simply looking at life a little bit differently, right? Looking at life as though, okay, I am the dictator of my reality. I am the individual that gets to choose whether or not I perceive the world as good or bad. And that by the snap of a finger, you can change that reality if you wish. And so we have to start with that baseline. If you want to achieve great things in life, you have to start looking at the world as great. You have to start looking at things that you go through in a day's time as great, right? Regardless of other people's opinion, regardless of how other people respond to things, you, right? You, not everybody else, because nobody else's fucking opinion matters. You have to be the individual that ultimately dictates whether or not you're going to look at this situation or this occurrence as good or bad, right? Because if you look at it as good and something that you can gain from it, you'll be able to get closer to your goals, as opposed to looking at it as something that is bad and something that you can't gain shit from. Who's going to win? The guy that looks at it as a possibility for growth, or the guy that looks at it as a possibility for nothing, right? He can't gain anything from it. It's common sense, guys. You have to look at things as something that could be of your added benefit. Because there's no productivity in looking at it as it's not going to change your life, or it's not going to help you, or it's just negative, right? If you want good results, you have to look at good things that come out of everything, right? And so that ties into my whole idea of obstacles are the way. Hindrances in your path are the way. You have to lean into these things. Why do we have to lean into these things, right? Well, the reality is that the majority of people, the 99% of individuals, stray away from obstacles and hide whenever they come about. And so what I mean by that is that they avoid them. Right? They avoid the obstacles. They pretend they're not there. They complain when they are there. They don't use that obstacle to their advantage because they perceive it as bad. But as I had mentioned earlier, nothing is neither good nor bad, but it is ultimately what the man or the individual at hand thinks of it, right? Nothing is neither good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And so what I mean by that is every obstacle that comes in your way, you have a choice. You have a direct influence on whether or not you will perceive this as good or bad. Because you have that much power, and because you have that much of an advantage, when you realize that you are the perceiver of your reality and that you can shift it, as I had mentioned, with the snap of a finger, you then start to look at obstacles differently. As opposed to doing what you used to do, or doing what the majority of individuals tend to do, which is to look at obstacles as something that is bad, which is to look at obstacles as something that is an obstacle and something that is not going to be of added benefit in your life, you start to look at it as good, right? Our perception is reality. So if we want good results, we need to start looking at things as good. We need to start to lean into the obstacles as though it's a success, right? We have to start to lean into obstacles the same way we look at a success. Because how we look at things is ultimately how we perceive them. How we ultimately look at things is how we'll act towards them, right? The productivity of an obstacle only comes from you looking at it as something that is good, something that could be of added benefit in your life, right? How many times have you fallen off a bike, striked out when you were playing baseball? How many times have you missed a shot, right? We learn from our failures. We learn from the obstacles that come in the way. We learn from pitfalls, if you'll call it that. But again, I don't even like looking at it as that. I don't even like to perceive it as failure. I like to look at it as experience, right? All of my failures, all the obstacles, all the things that I've had to fucking go through, guys, that's experience under my belt. That's a tool in my tool belt now that I can ultimately utilize to propel me in the direction of my goals. And so you have to understand that you can once again look at every single obstacle that comes in your life as an advantage for you. You have more experience than the guy that's not trying. You have more experience than the guy that's not doing shit. You're on the field playing while they're in the stands eating popcorn. That's my point here, is that you have to use these obstacles to your advantage. Because what is the point of looking at it as a negative? Looking at it as something that's, you're not going to gain from it. Okay, look at it that way. You won't gain shit. That's my point, is that you have the choice. Would you rather gain something from it or not gain anything at all? Would you rather take that pain that you're feeling in this moment and use it as fuel? Or would you rather just disintegrate it? Why would you do yourself that disservice? You've already gone through the pain. You've already gone through the shit. Use it to your advantage. Use it for something. Don't let all that pain and all that anger and all that resentment build up and be useless, be futile. Use it to a good standard. Use it for something that will ultimately get you closer to your goals, guys. What I mean by leaning into those obstacles is that every single quote-unquote failure that people perceive as a failure, which in reality is not a failure, it's just experience, is something that you can use to get closer to your goals. You can use it for good, right? If you perceive it as good. And so what I mean is perception is reality. And so you need to lean into these obstacles and understand them and perceive them in a different way. Perceive them as though they are good. Whenever something arises in your life, whenever something comes at you, look at it in a different manner. Examine it, observe it. Marcus Aurelius looked at these things and he examined them. And I want to read you a quote from him right now. The mind converts and changes every hindrance to its activity into an aid. And so that which is a hindrance is made a furtherance to an act. And that which is an obstacle on the road helps us on the road. Okay? I want to read that one more time. I want to read the first line. The mind converts and changes every hindrance to its activity into an aid. Guys, use those hindrances, use those obstacles, use those negativities, right? Whatever we perceive it. If we perceive it as negative, it's going to be negative. But use that good experience of learning, of failing, of going through the shit as something that is to your aid. Because why wouldn't you? Right? Why would you just throw it out and look at it as a bad circumstance? You're not going to gain anything from that. You have to gain anything and everything that you can in this world because it gives you wisdom, it gives you knowledge, it gives you experience, it gives you opportunity to grow. And so what I mean by that is take every single occasion, good or bad, whatever the fuck it is, because nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Stop looking at it as good or bad. Just look at it as it is, right? It is done, right? Whatever it was, it was. And I can use this to my advantage if I propel it in that direction. You can use everything to your advantage. You can learn from anything. And so my point, guys, change your reality. Change your perception on things. Because if you use the obstacles to your advantage, you will outcompete every motherfucker out there. And excuse my French and excuse my language, but I promise you, if you use these obstacles to your advantage, you're in the first place position. Because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't take their obstacles as something that they can gain from. And as a result, they don't gain anything. They have less tools in their tool belt. But if you utilize those tools, you put them in your tool belt and you make sure to save them for when you need them in different occurrences that occur, right? The next time something happens, you'll be able to avoid that obstacle. You'll be able to avoid that thing because you learned from it and you gained something from it. You will get ahead in this life. And I promise you, if you take something from this video, perceive reality differently. Look at it differently. Use it to your advantage because you are the creator of your destiny.